Well, good evening, everyone. This is Michael. Tuya's not feeling so well this evening, so I'm substituting a little bit, and maybe we all hope that by 6 o'clock in the morning our time, which is 3 a.m. GMT, that she'll feel better and be able to do the full moon, the exact moment of the full moon, which is going to be at 4:32 and 38 seconds. Well, this is an important time. The whole idea of Virgo, that great constellation, very expansive, constellations in space. They're generally given a generic measurement of 30 degrees, just like the signs are, but Virgo is very expansive, and somehow is measuring over 40 degrees of the zodiac. It's totally fundamental to everything we're doing on Earth and has a great connection to it. It's an Earth sign, and it is thereby, connected particularly with our Earth, just as Taurus and Capricorn are as well, too. You mentioned that earlier in her broadcast, I think, last night. Well, we live on a non-sacred planet, and our task is to somehow assist in making it a sacred Earth. Now that means, of course, making the members of the various kingdoms of nature, and let's just focus on humanity for a moment, sacred vessels for the higher soul energies. So we all have something really cut out for us to do as we try to achieve in our own little way the assumption of the Virgin, that is, the lifting up of matter of our personality into the light and pervasion of the soul, so that it becomes truly infused by the soul and worthy of association with that higher source, the soul, and thus redeemed, the redemption of matter, the elevation of matter. It's a redemptive act that we as monads are engaged in. It's so interesting that the monadic plane from whence we began this particular part of our pilgrimage is ruled by Virgo. And so right away you see there's a redemptive motive behind the descent of the monad through 5 different planes: atmic, buddhic, mental, astral, and etheric physical, before it can return rejoicing to the Father's home on the monadic plane, having carried out the elevation of matter that remained from the moon chain, and particularly from the previous solar system in which Virgo was the main ruler for the last half of that solar system. You may notice we played kind of an Irish reel, kind of a dance, before we began, and how interesting it is to note that Ireland is ruled in its soul nature by Virgo, and I would say, in a way, the fourth ray or the second ray, fourth ray and second ray and sixth ray are really, really strong in that country. And there's something, well, it's a little bit of a sidetrack, but very beautiful about Irish dance, and maybe you've seen some of that recently. They tend, like most Virgos, not to use their hands. The hands stay down at the waist or lower, and only the feet. Pisces is the personality ruler, are used. Oh, the great signs of the zodiac in so many ways do reflect in the behavior of the nationals of the various countries their quality. Now we're dealing with pentagram. Why the pentagram of all things, you know? And, well, first of all, the soul is found on the fifth subplane, cosmically considered. It's the mental plane, and it's the higher mental plane. So that number 5, of course, is associated with the pentagram and pentagon, and particularly the upward pointing 5-pointed star. That's what we're dealing with when we deal with the soul. And if you take a look at the various kind of models and diagrams of the egoic lotus, you'll notice that the soul part of it is 5-fold. It really is a pentagram. Sometimes souls are called the triangles, but it can also be called the pentagram. So when we have these sacred pentagram services, we're trying to, or little meditations really, we're trying to get that power of the fifth kingdom of nature, the kingdom of souls, to descend into our personal life and redeem it. You know, look at the egoic lotus. You've got the knowledge petals, love petals, mental sacrifice petals. You've got the synthesis petals, and you've got the jewel in the lotus, the reflection of the monad. Now there you have the 5. There's your pentagram by one way of counting. So humanity has made a lot of mistakes and has gone on a material trajectory at different times of its expression on earth, and has embodied the downward pointing 5-pointed star, the concrete mind serving the desire nature. But now, of course, we're sadder but wiser, we've learned, and we want that upward pointing pentagram, and that's why we call these the sacred pentagram approaches. And DK certainly, you know, tells us we can approach in various ways. According to 3, 5, or 7, we've chosen something he really emphasizes quite a bit, the 5-fold approach. And so we have really 4 pentagram meditations, and then the day of the full moon itself, on which most likely it's not necessary to do a pentagram meditation because we have the full moon meditation. Well, you know, here is it's interesting, you know, colors are interesting, and here's our blue rose, and it's such a wonderful idea for the rose flower. It's said that the rose of the Christ is very definitely the red rose, and the rose of Master Kutumi is the white rose. I was told by a member of DK's group before she passed on. And then the blue rose. Well, one has only to think about the blue logos, our particular solar logos, whose color is esoterically indigo blue, and somehow it represents the great heart of the sun. So when we're thinking about our blue rose, you know, the heart of the sun idea permeating our heart center, permeating our egoic lotus causal body, it's a beautiful image. Just pause for a moment and think about that. We're all of us no matter what our race may be. We are examples sent forth from a great heart center, and so this color blue is really important to us, and especially in this particular solar system, which as far as the solar logos goes is the solar system of the soul. It's the fifth, and there you go, there's your pentagram again, the 5 and the 2 associated. Our solar angels have a very strong resonance on the number 5 and on the number 2. They embody the second aspect of divinity, love and wisdom, and they're found intelligently on the plane of higher mind. The 5 and 2, and that connects them with Venus, where some of their training will occur, and with Sirius, the 5 and 2, where some of that training occurs. When we're members of the Blue Rose Sisterhood, the Blue Rose Group, we will be getting more and more into the will to good as we come closer to 2025. And what is the good? Well, the philosophers have argued about that for a long time. But the good has a lot to do with the second aspect of the first aspect of will. So it's a combination of the 1 and the 2, and it's a perfect archetypal design that is meant to be achieved. So sometimes we go for the good, sometimes for the beautiful, sometimes for the true, and as a growing soul we'll go for all three, the good, the beautiful, and the true, all of them gathered in this will to good. And let us think there for a moment. When I say think, I often mean meditate. Are we serving the will to good? Do we know what the good is? Do we have a way to bring some little ounce of goodness into the life of humanity and onto our little planet? Well, we hope, to help with that in our Blue Rose work here as we advance through the love wisdom and finally into the will aspect of the soul, the sacrifice aspect, and it may be Ray 1, but there's a lot of Ray 2 in it. It's a very beautiful picture, and sometimes Master Moria talks about the wings of the individual. Obviously these are rays from the shoulders. You can't really go to the back of the person here, but the idea of the wings raising the human being to the status of the Deva kingdom, and of course the heart and the chalice are both represented. It's somehow a very, very beautiful drawing, a painting, illustration, and somehow, very, very Scandinavian, but it does really represent the chalice of goodness that we're going to offer to the Christ when this whole process is concluded, and how I think we'll be elevated closer to solar angelhood, you might say. It'll take a long training on the star Sirius for the majority of humanity, but we begin to no longer be the human elemental, we become the human Deva, the angel. And there's something of that in this illustration. Even the geometry, God geometrizes, and there's an 8-year span here that occurs about every 100 and something years. Changes a little bit, but over 100 years, and then another 8-year span in which you have an inferior and a superior conjunction of Venus and the Sun. And often what we'll see there is that little dot of Venus moving across the face of the Sun. So the second ray, the great geometrizer, and when you get those planets lined up, Earth and Venus and the Sun, the possibility of new impulses for the soul are present. You know, what's amazing is the Aquarian age begins, we're told by the Tibetan in a letter to Roberto Assagioli, begins in 2017. Well, 2117, 2117. Not 2000, I mean, we're about 100 years away. And when you think about that, 2117, it's very close. Well, it is the beginning of the Aquarian age, and just that's what he says, and also the Venus transit across the Sun. And Aquarius, which will have current for 2,000 years or so, and Christ will work with it, is a great fifth ray sign. Again, the number 5 for the soul. A lot of people will be taking at least the earlier initiations under Aquarius, and it will be a group process, and it will be held on the physical plane. So that number 5 is so important because it gives the power for initiation. And here, the great director, who's ever directing this dance, has spelled it out for us in the various places where the alignments occur between Earth, Venus, and the Sun, making eventually the five-pointed star. Even when we take initiation, it's that five-pointed star that flashes out above the head of the initiate. So I'm just saying, how important is this number 5? Not representing the concrete mind, but representing the 5th kingdom of nature, the kingdom of souls. It's just astonishing that that such a figure as this can geometrically emerge from the motions of the 3 participants here, the Sun, Venus, and the Earth. And I think, I may be mistaken, but I think when you cut an apple, you get a 5 in terms of the seeds. And somehow that 5 is represented in the apple, which is a very Venusian kind of fruit, and represented also in the rose. Near the UN, where we used to work with the Arcane School, there was a wonderful rose garden, and Master Moria suggests walking in rose gardens because somehow the fragrance is elevating to the soul. So everything is speaking the soul. And we have to learn to live as souls. Enter the 5th kingdom of nature. Make the necessary sacrifices. The Christ is such a sacrificial being that I wouldn't be surprised if you examine Venus closely. There's some kind of equivalence between the most rapidly developing human being in our group of human beings from the previous solar system, the moon chain and the earth chain, the most rapidly developing, and the most rapidly developing planet, Venus. Way ahead. Not the equivalent of the synthesizing planets, but very rapid in its development, just like the Christ. Not the equivalent of Sanat Kumara, but very rapid in his development. All through the understanding of the soul, the pentagram, the number 5. And here we are with our objective. That this great love-wisdom rose will blossom at the heart of the pentagram, and we will, whatever our rays may be, will be turned into the love beings we should be as we represent the heart center. We represent our solar logos. The whole objective here of the blue rose, of course, too, you can explain it better than I, but I'll just say that it's not just talking about the energy of love wisdom, it's being, expressing the energy of love wisdom, intelligent love wisdom. So we're really dealing with the substance of this great energy and not just with words. Now names are changing every day, and I'm going to leave that to Tuya when she gets together with you next time, which I think will be on maybe, it's coming up. We'll see, Sunday and Monday. But we know our Lakshmi name. Lakshmi being, a kind of a Sanskrit term for Venus. And our higher ideal name should be related to Venus at first, and maybe to other sacred and synthesizing planets later. So let's take our malas, 108 stops on the mala. 108 is such an important number when it comes to the head center and the general structure of chakras within the human system. And we will repeat our Lakshmi name 108 times, going deeply into the meaning of it if we can. Okay? So here we go. the practice of deity yoga. It's one of the methods used by the Dalai Lama, and I suppose many people in the East, and it will, for us, as we conceive it, embody the qualities of the egoic lotus that we have to build in, and, you know, of the head center too, as 108 is a way of, well, if you pile 908s on top of each other, you're going to get that 972, and basically if you add the 960 of the petals plus the 12 of the uppermost heart in the head center, you get the 972 again. So there's lots of sums to 9 going on here, and showing the completion. And all of this is part of occultism. And we, you know, what we practice, we insist in spiritual occultism. It's not the use of powers and forces for our own personal advantage. So let us, in light of the high qualities we are invoking, let us sound the great invocation. We'll, you know, not necessarily, I think, have to do this in English. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Well, these days, keep your discipleship in mind. The work of the Christ with those gathered around him was the early work demonstrating an ashram in externalization. This we are told. And that will become an externalized fact for many of us during the Aquarian Age. We're working together Well, in a way, we're all of us mothers of the Christ, we're all of us Shiva, all of us, when you think of us in our soul nature. But let's think of the Blue Rose Sisters, and as we do so, we say, I bless you, my beloved sisters, the mothers of the Christ. And in our role as Shiva, the first aspect, I bless you, my beloved brothers, the protectors of the Christ, even as the avatar of synthesis, the spirit of peace, and the Buddha are gathered around the Christ now in a triangle, but the avatar of synthesis, he represents the father aspect and the first ray. We are all of these, of course. So let us ponder on the pentagram and on the rose, on the 5 and the 2. Some very beautiful possibilities concerning initiation will emerge, and ways that we can be truly helpful to our fellow human beings. The symbolism, of course, is there to be interpreted, bringing us to higher triadal planes when we understand the meaning of the images. I'm going to be heading off right now to a webinar. I'll be doing that at the usual webinar link, which I've put underneath. You should be somehow receiving what that link is underneath the image that comes to you. And the Virgo full moon, 3 a.m., and the exact moment, 4:32:38. And then we'll go on also. Two of you will be traveling, so not on, what was he? But probably Monday may be the next time we get together for the Sacred Pentagram. We'll try to let you know. And our goal in the Blue Rose Sisterhood, the Blue Rose Group, to really know what are these energies of the Christ and to be an example of their radiation. It's beyond the mind. It deals with the Buddhic energy. I think that's all I have to say for right now. We're grateful for your presence, and if you want to join us for a little, more astrological work during the webinar, it's coming up in just about 25 minutes. So lots of love from both of us, many blessings and appreciation for your presence, especially during these busy times when the full moon is brought forward. So we'll see you in just a little bit, some of you, and we'll keep these important things in mind. Christ in you, the hope of glory. The soul in you, the hope of glory. The transfiguration lies ahead. And we will be glorified even as He is glorified, provided we follow the proper rules which are given to us. Okay, friends. See you soon. Bye-bye.